Hello, everybody. We're going to talk about game genres today, and in general, these videos will kind of focus on, what are you going to make? So, as I figure most of you are watching these because you're thinking about making a game, and one of the very basic or rudimentary questions that you have to ask yourself is maybe, what genre am I going to make? And I know a lot of people might avoid this because of getting pigeonholed or something like that. But this is actually not a bad base because you can always expand on it. Now, genres itself is a little bit of a conflict or a controversial because a lot of game makers, developers, and designers would prefer you call these game styles because if you think about genres and other things like books and movies, they usually refer to content, meaning, am I doing a Western? That's a genre. Here we're talking about the actual challenges that a player faces. I'm comfortable with genre because basically it's used so often now. I wouldn't say it's particularly correct, but we're going to call these genres. And so let's get into what actually makes these things, what we're referring to as challenges. Action games. And this would include first-person shooters. I call these button mash games, but most people would refer to this as a physical challenge that's going on. Because you're trying to beat a system, it's going to be fast-paced. Hand-eye coordination is going to be key. Now, that's not to say that, looking at some of these other ones, like, say, a strategy game isn't going to be fast-paced. Obviously, if you've ever been in a StarCraft tournament, you know that these can be a lot of physical challenges here. But a lot of times, you're going to be using these, as it says, strategic and tactical things, where you're going to try to control a map and try to understand, say, a map and focus on how to create stop gaps and bottlenecks and things of that nature. So those become more important. Jumping down to real world simulations, and I'm going to put in sports games first because I have this very fancy word called verisimilitude, which essentially means reality. This has actually changed for sports games. It used to be sports games were a little bit more strategic and tactical. Now people really want real life, and that's verisimilitude is reality. If LeBron James is in an NBA game, you want that person, or at least usually the average sports games player, want this avatar to look like LeBron James and actually have his movement. So that has actually become real important, not just trying to put the ball in the hoop anymore. Now, I'll just let you look through some of these, but as you can see, adventure puzzles are always part of it. That's actually crept also into, and one of the ones I haven't put on here, a platformer. Adventure games, a lot of times you'll want to pick things up and kind of just really look into your environment. Then we have serious, where learning, solving, understanding, just kind of, they're meant to train usually. So their challenges aren't necessarily the good old-fashioned give me a joystick or give me a controller of some sort. And then lastly, we'll talk about hybrids, which take both of these to try to create a better environment. In fact, I remember I was reading this game magazine once, and they had a bunch of awards. And then one year they said, okay, we're not going to give out awards per category or genre in this case anymore, because so many of these games we're doing or we reviewed this year don't necessarily fit into adventure, strategy, whatever. They tend to all be hybrids or mixes. These types of challenges have been combined successfully. Now, hold on to that thought though for a second, because you can make a couple major mistakes here. And the first is binary thinking. That means that you have a very exclusive group. What you like, nobody else likes, and what everyone else likes, you don't like. That can be a problem, and so hybrids have kind of defeated that idea. So in other words, we're talking about the puzzles in platformers. That has actually worked out relatively well. However, interests should overlap, or else you're going to have crazy stuff. Because if we go back a couple slides, you wouldn't want to necessarily create an action game with puzzle games, because if a puzzle is using logic and conceptual challenges, to rush somebody might take away the fun of those games. Some people may like a quick puzzle. Most puzzle players like to just sit down and relax and do that. So you can have that. You should really think about if these two things can overlap. And the other problem I've seen more is this universality versus inclusiveness. So we give a little bit of everything here, and then everyone will like it, but usually ends up nobody likes it because somebody's going to get frustrated by one of the parts, one of the extra pieces that you put in, or multiple parts of the extra pieces. We've often seen this in Hollywood. In fact, they might be the best example, because they'll take a really good plot and then shove a love interest in there, and the love interest doesn't work. And let's face it, when Hollywood does love interest, they don't really know much about relationships. So what they end up giving is this a frustrating piece to a great plot that they felt they needed to shove it in so they could get maybe the female viewers, or maybe just more viewers in general. Don't try to please everyone with this. I think one of the things that you should think about when you're making a genre is knowing somebody's not going to like it. And they're not going to like it just because of the game itself. It isn't because it's a bad game. It's because it's the game they don't want to play. And that's fine. Because remember, very few games have passed the 1% mark, which means the more than 1% of the world is playing. So that means even if you have a super successful game, 99% of the world will still not play it. But let's face it, it might be the best game ever, right? So don't cut that out. But at the same time, you might want to include other things. So, going back to that Western idea, there's no reason why you can't make a martial arts Western. Why not? The martial arts could fall into the action. The Westerns could pull up other parts, explorations, those sort of things. And you could actually do a nice little crossover where you can add not only different narrative pieces, but also different challenges within those narrative pieces. What I tell you to do here is just sit down with your idea, see if it can fit into a regular genre. If it can't, maybe hybrid your way. But when you think about which hybrid you're going to use, make sure that the two match. And I don't think necessarily one way is better than the other. So pick your genre and run.